I march for myself. I march for women. I march for everyone. I march for equality. Because I believe that everyone deserves equal recognition, freedom, and respect. On January 21st, we made history. People with different backgrounds marched in the Women's March for various reasons, but for the same general principles to apply to everyone equally, the main focus being women's rights. Not everyone who agreed was able to march, but many who did not march seemed to just flat out disagree. I posted a video of the march on social media and received several comments that expressed what I think a lot of people might be feeling about the march. Why can't you just be grateful for what you have? The United States does so much for women. Before you go out and protest, why don't you learn about the ways other countries treat women? Appreciate what you have and move on. Accept that Trump is your president. I understand that Trump is the president of the United States, but I am not in support of him. Even with him as our president, we are still very privileged as a country compared to others. But while the United States does support women in a lot more ways than other countries, there's still a lot more that can be done. The standards of living as a woman are lower than our male counterparts and therefore less acceptable. Why should we just sit back and be thankful for what we have when we have the privilege and option to speak our minds for what we deserve? Many people around the world do not have the option to protest. Our country gives us the freedom of speech, so I plan to use it. We should take action and let the United States lead by example. Shortly after the march, I watched one of Tomi Lahren's response in one of her Final Thoughts videos. Lahren, a 24-year-old woman, conservative, and Trump advocate, said that all the protesters care about is birth control and abortion, that we are teaching all young girls to become whiny and play the victim card when they don't get what they want. Birth control and abortion were not the only things protested in the Women's March, but they were a big part of it. They allow women the freedom to govern our own bodies and give us the choice to determine how we will live our lives. Choices about your own body is something I believe everyone should have, and as I'm about to travel the world and go to college, it's important to be able to determine how my body affects my life, especially as a young woman. Taking it away would be a huge step back in all the work people have done to get women to this point. And standing up for what you believe in is not playing the victim card. In fact, it's the opposite. It's being an advocate for yourself and others. The march was not only a way to get a clear message across, but a way for people who are facing gender inequalities in the United States right now to know that they are supported by one another. During this march, there was a moment of silence. At exactly 11:59, I held the hands of my friend's older sister and a woman who was a complete stranger. I was silent, reflecting on every sign I saw in St. Paul and imagining the people around the world experiencing the same moment as well. I reflected on the burdens and blessings that came with being a woman. I reflected on people treating me like I'm stupid, ditzy, or not smart enough as a man. Magazines and media over-sexualizing women. The women are constantly having to be aware of their surroundings in fear of being sexually assaulted. That everywhere I look, I see unrealistic body types and beauty standards that we are expected to want to achieve. But all this is always met with a huge community of supportive women telling us to love our bodies, their shape, and knowing our self-worth. When we all joined together that day, I felt so supported by everyone in the crowd. Spreading awareness of the inequalities that women are facing is an empowering experience. It gives an example to all young girls that their mothers, sisters, grandmothers, and friends are not afraid to speak their mind and will not sit back while the rights they do have are being threatened, dismissed, or disparaged. Although this movement was a huge step in the right direction, and I'm thankful for so many who went out to support it, it saddens me that not nearly as many people showed up to support the Black Lives Matter demonstrations, the governor's mansion protests, and the Muslim ban protests. All these protests represent equality and respect for different groups of people, but one group seems to be more of a priority than others for many. It seems the reason why so many of the Women's March protesters did not go out to support Black lives is because it was an issue with race, which is much more controversial and less relatable than women's rights. I understand why people march when they feel threatened, but if you truly believe everyone should have equal rights, then why don't you march for others? People also like to protest things that are trendy, and the Women's March was definitely trending worldwide. Some people even went as far as asking to borrow a sign my friends and I had an Instagram picture. They had brought a nice digital camera that was not pointing at the marchers, but at themselves, taking pictures with other people's signs in front of the Capitol to share with their followers. Later that day, I saw countless articles and comments on social media about how this was such a peaceful protest and that there were no shootings, comparing the march to all the Black Lives Matter protests. But think about it. Can you imagine a police officer shooting a white woman protesting? When it comes to a Black man protesting, something changes in people and they feel as if they can be as hard as they think they need or want to be. I loved what everyone was doing for women that day, but if even half or a quarter of the 100,000 people at that march went to a Black Lives Matter protest or immigration ban protest in Minnesota, we could change so much more. We could change so much more if we respected our differences while realizing that we all just want and deserve equal rights. There is a difference between feminism and between white feminism and feminism for people of color. I'm not only fighting for equality as a woman, but for my race as well. Equality for being a woman of color. My mom is American and my dad is Ivorian. My parents divorced when I was 6 and my dad has lived in the Ivory Coast since, making me and my brother the only 2 people of color in my family, along with a completely different last name. I was not very influenced by people of color in my life while living in Minnesota, and so I wasn't consciously aware of the struggles I was facing as a child. Everywhere I went when I was little, I was always one of the only people of color, if not the only. I was constantly being asked if I was adopted and wanted so badly to fit in with all my white surroundings. But as I've grown up, I've become aware of these differences and the inequalities that I face as a woman of color, and I've begun to embrace and love myself for who I am. It took me quite some time to figure out my identity, and upon doing so, I'm going to do what I can to ensure that I am treated with the same respect as others. From being comfortable about wearing my natural hair down, getting leadership positions in and out of school to prove to myself and others the strength of women of color, to attending marches and protests, I intend to become stronger by embracing every single side of myself more. American, African, woman. There are many things that can be done every day to bring awareness that we are all equal, that we are all human. We don't only have to go to marches or protests to spread awareness, but we should do anything we can to show the world that we all deserve equal rights and fair treatment. Even if it is just embracing who you are as a person and accepting those around you. If you are privileged, stand up for others. Let everyone know that neither race nor gender nor religion limits anyone's abilities whatsoever. It's understandable that women marched for women. It makes sense that someone is most motivated when something is about them. But if you truly believe in equal dignity and respect for all, then you have to march when the principle is under attack, not just when you yourself happen to be in the specific group that is being targeted that day. I march, I protest, and now I'm speaking. What are you doing?